I'm Ken Graeve, Minnesota Department of Transportation. I work with the Erosion and Stormwater Management Group, and so it's mostly construction erosion control and stormwater management, and historically that has gone up until turning it green. And once it's green, we're off the hook and we get to go. But I want to focus more on that green and making sure we have the right vegetation. One of my employees likes to say that if we grew crops the way MnDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation, the way MnDOT grows roadside vegetation, we would all starve. And so to explore why that's been so difficult for us, I played this little game of lightning round with this meeting of our top engineers and project managers in the department. And before I get going, how many people here are familiar with the process of pouring pavement? We got a few DOT folks here. So this group was highly expert in that. And so to show them the conflicts with growing roadsides while building a roadside, I went through this. I said, okay, I'm just a botanist, not too clued in on construction, so I need a little help here. And so I asked them, I said, so we're going to compare pouring pavement with planting seed. So before we pour pavement, what do we need? And what do we need? Do we need something on the ground? We need something in place before we can pour. Can you tell me what we need first before we pour concrete? Yeah. We need a base. We need the right combination, the right sizing of aggregate, so we have the right structural integrity and the correct drainage. And if we don't have that, it's just not going to work. And I said, okay, so what if you don't have that base? What do you do? And they kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and they said, we go get it. And I said, okay, good. And what would happen if you didn't have it? And they say, well, of course it wouldn't work. It would fall apart. It wouldn't only last a few years. The freeze-thaw cycles would kill it. And I said, okay, good, thanks. Now let's talk about seeding. What do we need before we can plant seeds? And they know this. This is just basic. So they said, well, you need topsoil. I said, good. We need the right combination of particle size and organic matter and nutrients so that that soil has the right drainage and the right water holding capability and can support plant growth. And then I said, so what do you need? What do we do if we don't have the right topsoil? And they kind of looked at each other and laughed sheepishly, and they said, well, we plant anyway. I said, all right, that's kind of what I've noticed. And then I said, okay, what about timing and weather? How long does it take to pour concrete? And what kind of weather conditions do you need to get that to cure correctly? I said, well, it cures in about a day. And well, it can't be too hot. It has to be above freezing. If it's pouring down rain, we might dilute it a little bit, so we don't want to do it in the rain. And if it's too hot, well, if it's too dry, well, we can always add water, put blankets on it to keep it moist longer. So basically, decent weather for a day. And I said, all right, and if you have decent weather for a day, you can guarantee me that that concrete is gonna cure correctly. And they said, well, yeah, sure. I said, okay. What kind of weather conditions do you need to grow seed, not just to plant it? We know we need to get it in the ground when it's relatively dry or just not soaking wet, but not just to plant it, but to get that seed to grow and get it to establish and mature so we have a healthy, functional roadside that we can hand off to our maintenance crew. And they said, well, I guess you need rain and sun. And anyway, we need somehow, if to guarantee the right success that they and the consistency that they can provide with construction, I need them to be able to guarantee 6, 12, maybe 18 months of the right combination of rainfall and sunlight and not too hot and not too cold. And that right there illustrates just one of the biggest inherent differences. One more quick thing I hit on with them is I said, so what if you're pouring concrete and something's wrong? Who's there to notice if something's wrong? If the mix isn't right, or if the base isn't right, or if it's being done wrong? And they said, well, we're there. And well, our inspectors are there. And I said, well, how do your inspectors know? And how do you know? And they said, well, training, school. We're experts. I said, okay, good. If we're planting seed, who is there to know if the seed mix is wrong, or if the topsoil is wrong, or if we're planting at the wrong time? And they kind of look at each other again and say, well, the contractor knows a lot about it. And so right there we have a serious problem, because not only is that a conflict of interest for the contractor to be telling us what we need to pay them to do, But our seeding contractors are not ecological restoration practitioners. They're typically erosion control contractors. They're expert in silt fence, in erosion control blankets, and hydromulch. They know how to run the tractor and they know how to run the seed drill, but they honestly couldn't tell you how to identify most of the species that are in those mixes, much less the weed seedlings that might come up. So we have the wrong expertise there. So we have some things where we have similarities. We need the right base. We need the right expertise, but we treat them totally differently. We don't give it the right level of attention when we're building as we should when we're growing. And other things where they're totally different timelines. We need an adaptive management approach. We can't just give a cookie cutter recipe like we can for a construction work. Pouring pavement, it runs pretty much the same way, all things equal. It's not like that with trying to grow things. And so the question is, what do we do to try to overcome these problems? We're still going to have to be doing the growing when we're doing the building. That's just how our funding works. I don't have the answers for you, but I'll just tell you real quick what we're trying to do. We're looking at, one of the options we're looking at was discussed here earlier, where to add flexibility into our process, we're looking at a separate contract, not to do the planting, but to pick up wherever the general contractor left off, maybe bundle 5 projects from last year and hand over the vegetation management part to a specialty contractor this year. They can do any reseeding or watering or weed control that's needed. Another approach is just to give it more expertise. I currently have a position open I'm trying to fill, and instead of hiring someone with just erosion and stormwater expertise, I'm looking for someone with expertise in vegetation management so we can send them out to projects to give them more expert oversight, more hand-holding to our inspectors who don't have the time to be expert in this, and see what we can achieve there. And another thing is trying to write specs that build in more flexibility. So one of the things on the Google Drive from the resource potluck is a performance-based spec for vegetation establishment. So it doesn't say anything about what to plant or when to plant. It just says by the end of 3 years, we want this type of vegetation, this many species, you can only have this many weeds, and we're going to pay you accordingly. So just a few ideas, ways we're looking at to try to bring those processes back together so that we can do our growing while we're trying to do our building.